Senator Lee.
Bipartisanship is very common in some areas and less common in others. Tragically, increasing the debt ceiling has been a bipartisan venture. And it's happened in a way that sort of pits us together as Americans, not as Democrats against Republicans, so much as Washington, D.C. and Wall Street against everyone else. America's poor and middle class have been ravaged by this pattern and practice of abuse, one that enriches a small handful of elites at the cost of everyone else. I keep thinking about how prices have increased over the last couple of years. Just in the last couple of years, the average Utah family's monthly living expenses have gone up $1,000 a month. Every single month, that's a recurring expense. That is the direct, foreseeable, and in fact foreseen and avoidable result of Congress pushing the button over and over and over again to effectively print more money. You see, that's what happens when you just print more money, as you effectively do, when you spend trillions of dollars a year more than you have, and you increase the debt ceiling, authorizing the issuance of new U.S. debt instrument. That creates more money moving through circulation, which means every dollar that someone has to buy bread, eggs, milk, or to pay for housing, transportation, or whatever it is, it buys less. Most people don't see their incomes rising. If they're rising at all, they don't see them rising commensurate with inflation, and not even close. And so as a result, poor and middle class Americans are being ravaged. It really is tragic that this has happened with such bipartisan cooperation, or I would say collusion. And the reason is, if either party, if sufficient members of either party had at any point stepped in and said, enough, let's not do this, things might have been different. And it's a lot easier to stop additional harm from happening than to undo previous harm. So this has gone on far too long. It's disappointing to us that a lot of members of our own party have been unwilling to do the difficult things. We are hoping and expecting this time it may be different. We understand that there are a lot of realities that we have to face, but one of those realities is this: the overall number is simply too big. We're going to devastate not only the poor and middle class of this country even further if we don't stop this, but we're also simultaneously going to impair the federal government's ability to fund everything from Social Security and Medicare to defense and everything in between if we don't change course. It's one of the reasons why, as a conference in the last year or two, the Senate Republican Conference adopted a policy statement. And that policy statement is echoed in a letter that I've authored and that's been joined so far by a couple dozen of my colleagues. We're still collecting signatures. A letter addressed to President Biden in which we echo our conference position, in which we explain what it is that we're going to do. The conference position itself says that it's our policy that, quote, any increase in the debt ceiling must be accompanied by cuts in federal spending of an equal or greater amount as the debt ceiling increase, or meaningful structural reform in spending. And so, look, it's got to be different. It has to be, because the consequences of staying on the same course are too devastating for us to contemplate, certainly too devastating for us to accept.